It's been nearly 30 years since Capcom first invited us into the Spencer Mansion. Over the years, Resident Evil has reinvented itself time and time again. From the fixed camera angles and tank controls that fueled our nightmares, to the over-the-shoulder revolution in Resident Evil 4, the shift to pure action in Resident Evil 6, and finally, the return to the roots of horror at the Baker estate. We have run, fought, and solved puzzles alongside this series, but with so many titles, picking the top 10 isn't easy. So to keep things fair, we are going to base this list strictly on Metacritic scores. So, here are the top 10 Resident Evil games ranked according to their Metascore.
Number 10, Resident Evil Village, release 2021, Meta 84, release platforms PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One and Series, Windows. Cost unknown. Sell 11 million copies. Playtime, main story 10 hours, main plus extras 13 hours, completionist 38 hours. Resident Evil Village, released in 2021, is a direct and successful continuation of the new path that began with Resident Evil 7. The game cleverly establishes its place in the series. The name Village contains the Roman numeral for 8, wait, to show that this title is the 8th main installment in the series storyline. Story-wise, the game once again places us in the role of Ethan Winters. The story begins a few years after the events of the 7th game with the kidnapping of Ethan's daughter, Rose, and leads him to a mysterious, snow-covered village in Eastern Europe. This direct narrative connection adds more depth to Ethan's character development and creates an emotional and perilous journey for the player. The game's gameplay is a masterful blend of the horror elements from the 7th game and the popular action of Resident Evil 4. Although the first-person camera perspective is retained, the game has become significantly more action-oriented with an increase in enemies, more varied weapons, and the introduction of a shopping and selling system from the Duke. The village and its surrounding areas, from the Gothic castle Dimitrescu to the eerie house Beneviento, each offer a different feel and style of horror, which is considered one of the game's main strengths. Overall, Resident Evil Village was another great success for Capcom that managed to satisfy both critics and players. By presenting an engaging story, charismatic and memorable villains, the Four Lords, and creating an entertaining balance between horror and action, the game proved that the Resident Evil series is still at its peak. This game has 2 downloadable content packages. Resident Evil Re.Verse, which is a free multiplayer component that was released with the main game. It was met with a cold reception and could not replicate the success of the story mode. The full experience of this mode takes about 7 hours, and the paid DLC, The Mercenaries, Additional Orders. This DLC is part of the Winters expansion and adds new characters like Chris Redfield, Heisenberg, and Lady Dimitrescu to the popular Mercenaries mode. This DLC offers an arcade and entertaining experience that adds about 2 hours of new content to the game. Number 9, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, release 2017, Meta 86, release platforms PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One and Series, Windows. Cost unknown. Sell 15 million copies. Playtime. Main story 9 hours, main plus extras 12 hours, completionist 27 hours. Resident Evil 7. Biohazard, released in 2017, was not just a game, but a complete rejuvenation for a series that had lost its identity after recent action-oriented installments. Released after a 5-year gap since the 6th entry, and amidst much skepticism, the game managed to powerfully return the series to its survival horror roots with a bold change of direction. The biggest and most significant change was the shift in camera perspective from third person to first person. This decision, which initially worried some fans, was executed in the best way possible, elevating the sense of immersion and terror to an unprecedented level for the franchise. The Hollywood-style action and the slaughter of hundreds of zombies were gone. Instead, the player, as Ethan Winters, was trapped in the tight, dark corridors of the Baker family mansion, where every shadow and sound could be the source of a deadly threat. With a significant reduction in action and a focus on exploration, puzzle solving, limited resource management, and escaping from powerful enemies, Resident Evil 7 was exactly what longtime fans had wished for. The heavy atmosphere, mysterious story, and constant feeling of powerlessness and vulnerability created a deeply terrifying and breathtaking experience. This successful return to its roots brought resounding satisfaction from both critics and longtime fans of the series. Critics praised the game for its courage to change, its outstanding art direction, and for creating one of the most terrifying experiences of its generation. Players were also extremely pleased to finally experience a truly scary and authentic Resident Evil. Resident Evil 7 proved that the series could still be a leader in the horror genre and paved the way for its successful future. Number 8. Resident Evil 2.
Release 1998. Meta 89. Release platforms: PlayStation, Windows, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, GameCube. Cost $5 million. Sell 6 million copies. Playtime: Story mode 6 hours, side missions 3, completionist 15 hours. Following the massive success of Resident Evil 1, Capcom wasted no time and immediately started working on its sequel. This time, fully aware of the franchise's enormous potential, they increased the game's budget tenfold to $5 million, giving the development team 2 years to create a bigger and richer experience than the first game. The world of Resident Evil 2 expanded significantly compared to its predecessor, unlike the original, which mostly took place within the confined walls of Spencer Mansion. Players could now explore Raccoon City's streets, the police station, the city's underground sewers, and Umbrella's research facility. The game also saw major improvements in controls, gameplay, technical graphics, and storytelling. The story is set 2 months after the events of the first game, when the T-virus has spread across Raccoon City, turning all living creatures into zombies. This time, the game introduces 2 playable protagonists: Leon S. Kennedy, a rookie police officer about to begin his first day at the Raccoon City Police Department, unaware of the viral outbreak that awaits him; Claire Redfield, who arrives in Raccoon City searching for clues about her missing brother. The two cross paths by chance, and as the story unfolds, they must work together to survive and escape the city. The gameplay is a blend of action, adventure, and survival horror, featuring challenging puzzles, key, and item hunting, combining resources for later use and intense battles against both regular enemies and powerful bosses. The fixed third-person camera angles, previously introduced in the first game, remained one of the game's key distinctions from other titles of that era, with multiple difficulty settings and the ability to play as 2 unique protagonists, each with their own storylines, weapons, and paths. Resident Evil 2 boasted high replay value. The game received exceptional reception, earning a score of 89 from critics, and its sales surpassed 6 million copies. Initially released on 2 discs for PlayStation 1, one of the most fascinating aspects of its development was Capcom's ability to fit the game onto Nintendo 64 cartridges. Despite the console's storage limit of just 64 megabytes, this impressive compression technique remains one of the most remarkable feats in the game's development history.
Number 7. Resident Evil 2 Remake, Release 2019. Meta 93. Release platforms: PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One and Series, Windows. Cost unknown. Sell 15 million copies. Playtime: main story 9 hours, main plus extras 15 hours, completionist 36 hours. Resident Evil 2 Remake, released in 2019, is not just a remake, but a glorious rebirth of one of the most beloved titles in video game history. This game is an absolute success and a masterclass in how to modernize a classic, earning the unconditional praise of critics and the complete satisfaction of both old and new fans. From the very beginning, this masterpiece set a new standard for the survival horror genre with its heavy atmosphere, stunning graphics, and flawless gameplay. By staying true to the core story and memorable environments of the 1998 original, Capcom succeeded in creating a deeply terrifying, thrilling, and yet thoroughly modern experience that captured the hearts of fans. The game's success is best reflected in its scores. With an amazing score of 93 out of 100 on Metacritic, Resident Evil 2 Remake has cemented its place in history. This outstanding score makes it one of the very few elite titles in the entire series to have surpassed the 90-point threshold, placing it on par with the greatest classics of all time. This incredible reception was not limited to critics. The game became a massive commercial success for Capcom with very high sales, over 13.9 million units, and brought the utmost satisfaction to fans. Players worldwide praised the game for its masterful recreation of Raccoon City and for delivering one of the best horror experiences of its generation. Without a doubt, Resident Evil 2 Remake is an absolute triumph and one of the best games ever made. Ever. Number 6. Resident Evil.
Release 1996. Meta 91. Release platforms: PlayStation, Windows, Sega Saturn, Nintendo DS. Cost $0.5 million. Sell 4 million copies. Playtime: story mode 6 hours, side missions 2 hours, completion 15 hours. Everything started with a spark in Shinji Mikami's mind, inspired by the classic game Sweet Home. Released in 1989, he decided to create a title with an eerie atmosphere set in a mysterious mansion. This ominous place was filled with terrifying creatures called zombies, which played a crucial role in shaping one of the most influential horror games ever. Although Resident Evil wasn't the first survival horror game, nor were zombies new to the world of video games, the idea of developing a horror title aimed at adults at a time when few believed in its success was a major risk. Before that, only Alone in the Dark in 1992 had explored the genre, which made Capcom's executives proceed cautiously. They allocated a relatively small budget of $500,000 for the project and initially decided that the game would be developed in Japanese and released only in Japan. If it received a positive reception, they would then create an English version. However, the game not only succeeded, but also paved the way for one of the most famous survival horror franchises. Resident Evil was widely acclaimed by both fans and critics, earning recognition as one of the most important games in history, with a lasting impact on the gaming industry. With a 91 score, it ranks among the best video games ever, selling 4 million copies. It generated around $200 million in revenue for Capcom, which was far beyond the initial budget of $500,000, turning it into more just a commercial success. The game's story unfolds in Spencer Mansion, a mysterious location filled with secrets. A special task force, STARS, is sent to investigate strange occurrences in the forests surrounding Raccoon City. However, they soon realize they are trapped in a terrifying nightmare. Players can take control of Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, navigating a world infested with zombies and mutated monsters, fighting for survival. Limited ammunition, complex puzzles, and a tense atmosphere are key elements of the game, successfully conveying fear and anxiety to players. The story behind the name Resident Evil I is quite interesting. Initially, Capcom launched the game in Japan under the title Biohazard, but when they decided to expand internationally, they discovered that the name was already trademarked for another product. As a result, Capcom had to change the name, ultimately settling on Resident Evil for global markets. However, in Japan, the franchise is still known as Biohazard, and subsequent installments continued to be released under this name.
Number 5. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis.
Release 1999. Meta 91. Release platforms: PlayStation, Windows, Dreamcast, GameCube. Costs $2 million. Sell 3.5 million copies. Playtime: Story mode 6 hours. Side missions to completion is 15 hours. At this stage, Capcom had realized that Resident Evil had become one of the most profitable franchises in the gaming industry. Initially, the third installment was planned as a spin-off with a $2 million budget, which was about half the cost of developing Resident Evil 2. However, as the game evolved and its story and gameplay potential became clear, Capcom decided to position it as the official third entry in the series. Some of its standout features included enhanced graphics, a gripping storyline, and an intense atmosphere, which effectively amplified the feeling of anxiety and tension among players. Raccoon City was artistically designed, with visual elements such as abandoned cars, destroyed streets, shattered windows, and dilapidated buildings, all conveying the downfall of a once thriving city. The zombies and other enemies, thanks to graphical improvements, look more realistic and terrifying. Additionally, Jill Valentine was redesigned to be more dynamic, and visually appealing compared to her first appearance in the original game. One of the most notable aspects of the game was the introduction of Nemesis, the main antagonist, whose name and image were even placed on the game's cover. Nemesis, depicted as a relentless and merciless threat, created moments filled with fear and heart-pounding chases, keeping players on edge. Furthermore, a new gameplay feature was added, allowing players to react differently to enemy encounters, something not present in previous games. This system gave players the choice between escaping or fighting, making split-second decisions, significantly impact gameplay. The story of Resident Evil 3 takes place alongside Resident Evil 2, with events starting one day before Resident Evil 2 and concluding 2 days after its ending. Jill Valentine, the game's protagonist, also a playable character from the first Resident Evil, is forced to find a way to escape after zombies attack her home. Meanwhile, Umbrella Corporation, attempting to silence the remaining STARS members, sends a tyrant named Nemesis to eliminate the team. Now, Jill must survive the horrors of the city while evading Nemesis, leading to a tense and thrilling experience. The game was highly praised, earning a 91% score from critics. and sales surpassed 3.5 million copies. Although this was a strong commercial performance, it was about half of Resident Evil 2's sales, signaling that Capcom needed to rethink its formula and introduce more fundamental changes to the franchise.
Number 4. Resident Evil Remake. Release 2002. Meta 91. Release platform GameCube. Cost unknown. Sell unknown. Playtime. Story mode 11 hours. Side missions 2 hours. Completion 29 hours. In 2002, Capcom decided to remake the first game in the Resident Evil series, and Shinji Mikami exclusively released it for Nintendo's new console, the GameCube. In 2008, this game was also released for Nintendo's next console, the Nintendo Wii. This title remained exclusive to Nintendo consoles for 13 years until 2015, when a remastered version with HD graphics was released for other platforms, including Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One. The remake not only improved in terms of technical and visual graphics compared to the original version, but its story and gameplay also underwent fundamental changes. According to Shinji Mikami, the remade Resident Evil had 70% story and structural changes compared to the previous version. For example, the duration of the game's story mode increased from 6 hours to 11 hours, indicating an expansion of the game's content. This game, like the original, managed to receive a score of 91 from critics and was met with widespread acclaim from gamers. Precise information about the sales figures for the GameCube and Wii versions is not available, but the HD remastered version had sold approximately 2.8 million copies by the end of 2020. Number 3. Resident Evil 4 Remake. Release 2023. Meta 93. Release platforms PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One and Series, Windows. Cost unknown. Sell 10 million copies. Playtime. Main story 16 hours, main plus extras 21 hours, completionist 64 hours. The original Resident Evil 4, released in 2005, is considered not only one of the most successful and popular titles in the series, but also one of the most influential games in history. For this reason, remaking such a work, which holds a place in the hearts of millions of fans, was an incredibly difficult and high-risk task. However, Resident Evil 4 Remake, released in 2023, rose to the challenge masterfully as a very successful and intelligent remake that managed to meet the high expectations of fans and critics. By preserving the core of the original's revolutionary gameplay, Capcom has significantly improved it by adding modern and effective mechanics like the knife parry system. The game's atmosphere evokes a greater sense of fear and tension compared to the original, and the graphics, thanks to the RE engine, display stunning visual details in the environments and characters. This high production quality was also clearly evident in its reception. Resident Evil 4 Remake, receiving scores above 90 out of 100 from most reputable outlets, solidified its place as one of the most acclaimed and best games of its release year. This success demonstrated that the original's compelling formula is still potent and remains appealing to a new generation of players. The game's experience was also expanded with more content post-launch. Capcom first made the popular arcade mode, The Mercenaries, available as a free update. Additionally, the high-quality story DLC, Separate Ways, was released as a paid expansion, which tells the game's story from the perspective of Ada Wong and adds a complete and valuable narrative chapter to the overall experience. Number 2, Resident Evil, code Veronica.
Release 2000. Meta 94. Platforms: Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, GameCube, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360. Cost: 10 million. Sell: 2.5 million copies. Playtime: Story mode 12 hours. Side missions 2 hours. Completion 14 hours. The year 2000 was a year of stark contrast as for the Resident Evil series. On one hand, there was Resident Evil Survivor with a score of 39. That is considered one of the weakest games in the franchise. On the other hand, there was Resident Evil Code Veronica with a score of 94. Is considered one of the best titles released in the Resident Evil series. First and foremost, it must be said that the game was initially released as an exclusive for the Dreamcast console, Sega's last console, which unfortunately faced commercial failure. Despite critical acclaim, the game did not achieve high sales due to the limited number of Dreamcast users. Therefore, Capcom ended the exclusivity a year later and released the game in 2001 as Resident Evil Code Veronica X for PlayStation 2 console. Code Veronica was the first game in the series to utilize fully 3D environments. Instead of pre-rendered 2D backgrounds, the camera angle was similar to previous installments, but this time the camera followed the main character, providing greater depth to the 3D environment. The graphics, reactions, and artificial intelligence of the enemies were significantly improved compared to the previous 3 games. Furthermore, this title was the first game in the series developed and released for 6th generation consoles. The game's story takes place after the events of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Claire Redfield, one of the main characters in Resident Evil 2, after failing to find her missing brother in Raccoon City, travels to Rockfort Island in Antarctica 3 months after the city's destruction in search of clues about Chris Redfield. The game's story is considered one of its main strengths, and many fans regard it as one of the best narrative storylines in the history of the Resident Evil franchise. Despite the game's high quality, its sales never reached the level it deserved, selling only 2.5 million copies. We hope that one day, a remake of this valuable title will be made, providing greater depth to the 3D environment. The graphics, reactions, and artificial intelligence of the enemies were significantly improved compared to the previous 3 games. Furthermore, this title was the first game in the series developed and released for 6th generation consoles. The game's story takes place after the events of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Claire Redfield, one of the main characters in Resident Evil 2, after failing to find her missing brother in Raccoon City, travels to Rockfort Island in Antarctica 3 months after the city's destruction in search of clues about Chris Redfield. The game's story is considered one of its main strengths, and many fans regard it as one of the best narrative storylines in the history of the Resident Evil franchise. Despite the game's high quality, its sales never reached the level it deserved, selling only 2.5 million copies. We hope that one day, a remake of this valuable title will be made.
Number 1, Resident Evil 4, release 2005. Meta 96. Release platforms: GameCube, PlayStation 2, Windows. Cost $10 to $15 million. Sell 13 million copies. Playtimes: Story mode 15 hours, Story mode plus side missions 19 hours, Completionist 31 hours. Resident Evil 4, released in 2005, didn't just revolutionize the video game world. It was more than a mere sequel. It was a bold and masterful redefinition of the survival horror genre. Abandoning the fixed camera angles characteristic of earlier Resident Evil titles, the game introduced an innovative over-the-shoulder perspective. This revolutionized third-person gameplay, enabling more precise aiming and delivering a more cinematic, action-heavy experience. The game wasn't just transformative for the Resident Evil series and the survival horror genre, it fundamentally changed the video game industry, profoundly influencing the design of subsequent third-person action games. Boasting a Metacritic score of 96, Resident Evil 4 ranks among the highest-rated games of all time. Initially launched as a GameCube exclusive, this timed exclusivity fortunately didn't last long. Just 10 months later, the game was released on other platforms as well. The story follows Special Agent Leon S. Kennedy, dispatched to a remote village in Spain on a mission to rescue Ashley Graham, the U.S. President's daughter. The area is controlled by the enigmatic Los Iluminados cult, whose members have been infected by the Las Plagas parasite, turning them violent and hostile. The game also features an additional scenario titled Separate Ways, starring the enigmatic and fan-favorite character Ada Wong. Its narrative runs parallel to Leon S. Kennedy's main campaign, revealing Ada's behind-the-scenes actions and clandestine objectives during Leon's mission. The primary purpose of this mode is to fill narrative gaps, showcase Ada's interactions with other key characters, like Albert Wesker, Luis Serra, and Jack Krauser, and shed light on her motivations, particularly concerning the acquisition of a Las Plagas parasite sample. Completing this side story takes approximately 3 hours. The game's success extended far beyond critical acclaim. Fans enthusiastically embraced it as well. Resident Evil 4 achieved massive commercial success, selling over 13 million copies across various platforms over the years, making it one of Capcom's and the Resident Evil franchise's best-selling titles.